Hi, Charles, SirBookSage here, and it is reading slump time, apparently. I kind of went down the rabbit hole recently of doing a database build, and I haven't done like database work in many years. I used to build these pretty extensive databases in Microsoft Access, just kind of a side thing I did as part of IT stuff that I do for a living. I recently got the idea that I really need to build out like a content calendar and a video production kind of process so I can actually get to being as consistent as I really want to be on this channel. And that kind of reawakened the dormant like database kind of whole part of my brain that I haven't really been using for quite a while. And that's what I've been doing for the past 3 weeks or so. I've been building out a whole work production process via like a database, relational database stuff. The downside of doing all that is it just plummeted me right into a reading slump, because I can't really be concentrating on reading the sci-fi and fantasy when my brain is in like database construct mode. But now that I have the whole database built and it's operational and I'm kind of using it behind the scenes, my reading slump is like, hello, you can't ignore me anymore. You know, you're supposed to be talking about things you're reading and watching and stuff, and you haven't been reading anything because you've been doing all this other stuff. So now I'm at the, okay, what am I going to do to get out of this reading slump? My normal go-to to get out of a reading slump is to just pick anything Tolkien and just start reading. I can open any Tolkien up to any page and just dive right in. But I think I'm going to do something a little different this time. I think I am going to go to one of the old Andre Norton sci-fi books from way back in the day. I reread a couple of her early sci-fi books not that long ago in the grand scheme of my reading. One of those being the first ever science fiction book I read as a kid. So it was really fun to go back and reread that again. And that was a book I had reread so many times as a kid but hadn't read in a long time. So it was really cool to go back and revisit it. So I think I'm going to do that. I've got some old Andre Norton stuff I picked up in my Kindle library recently. So I think this weekend I am going to pick one of those and I'm just going to sit down and I'm just going to dive into it and probably just do a straight read through, because her early sci-fi books, they're a few hundred pages long, so they're pretty quick reads. You know, I'm used to these days reading 900, 1000, 1100, 1200 page like giant epic fantasy or high fantasy books. So knocking out like a 300 page space opera kind of sci-fi is just kind of an afternoon of reading. So I think that's what this is going to be, my main reading for the weekend. So I started out this video as kind of talking about reading slumps and database builds, and I think it's now morphed itself in the conversation with you into a sort of a Friday reads, as in this is what I'm going to be reading this weekend. It's probably going to be one of her like time trader books. I'm not really sure. I'd have to go back and look at which specific ones. But for those who may not be aware, Tolkien is my favorite writer of all time, but Andre Norton is my second favorite. I have read more of her books than I've read of any other author, by far. I own more of her books than I do of any other author, by far. And I miss reading her books. When I was young, particularly junior high school and high school, no matter what else I was reading, I was also reading an Andre Norton book. Usually, I was in the middle of one of them, or going back and rereading. Her whole Witch World series is one of my all-time favorite sort of sci-fi fantasy series. It's kind of a melding of both. It's a fantasy world, but that has some sci-fi elements to it, because there's portals to other worlds and all sorts of stuff in it. So, but I miss reading Andre Norton. So that is going to be my reading for this weekend. So have you ever read any Andre Norton books? Just curious. I don't know who reads her. This is one of the strange things about being someone who's gone into bookstores his whole life. It's a totally different world these days. I miss going into the bookstore, going over to the sci-fi and fantasy section, and there's just 20 Andre Norton books, a whole bunch of Isaac Asimov, a whole bunch of Samuel R. Delany. I mean, where are their books? Does anyone buy them anymore? Does anyone read them anymore? Does anyone even know they exist anymore? I don't know, because I don't see people on here, even in the booktube sort of corner of YouTube, really talking about a lot of these authors. It's just interesting just how much, I guess, the publishing world and the market changes, where you go in now and I look at all this stuff in the sci-fi and fantasy section, and it's like I don't even know what most of it is at this point. Now that's probably me just not being like plugged in to the publishing world to the extent that I used to be when I was younger. But I think also part of that is all we had was let's go to the bookstore to see what's come out kind of stuff. There was no internet or anything way back then. So a lot of it was pretty much things that were either in the back of a published book letting you know what was coming, or it was just because we went to the bookstore all the time. It was one of like sort of weekly events. Let's just go see what came out. So while Tolkien is my normal go-to get out of a reading slump, automatic, it works every time for me. But I think I'm going to go to Andre Norton. I kind of got that bug rereading those two sci-fi sort of space opera novels recently. So I think that is my sort of spontaneous reading plans for the weekend here. And when I'm done reading whatever Andre Norton book I'm going to pick, it's back to the next Malazan book, Toll the Hounds. I'd have to look up on Goodreads how far in I am. Maybe 100 pages, somewhere around there. I'm not exactly sure. Still very early on, but absolutely loving it. The moment I opened that book and saw the map of Darujistan, I knew it's like, yes, we're getting Kruppe and some of the Bridgeburners, the ones who retired to run the little bar. We're finally back to them. And I'm super, super happy. So I really want to get back into that book because I'm just the beginning, but really excited. But I need to break the reading slump, and Andre Norton, I think, is what's going to do it for me tomorrow. Also, quick channel note, I had filmed the Mandalorian Season 3 Episode 7 and 8 reviews, but I scrapped them because I rewatched them. I started to edit 7, and I just hated every moment of it. So I just scrapped that. And I went and I rewatched Episode 7 again, kind of refreshed my notes. So I'm going to be re-recording that this weekend, getting that edited and up at some point, either tomorrow or Sunday, and then rewatching and then refilming my Season 3 finale review as well. Because when you're editing your own video and you're boring yourself, it was like, nope, this review is an absolute mess. So just junk it and redo it. So that's just a little programming note for the channel for those who watched my Mandalorian Season 3 kind of reviews of each episode. And who knows, maybe I'll fit in some Daredevil reading this weekend as well. We'll see. I'm working my way from the Daredevil issue 1 from way back in the 60s. I'm working my way all the way through. Still in the early Stan Lee writing parts of it. So very early on still. And on one second programming note, because why not? If I'm doing one program note, why not do 2 programming notes? I shifted my kind of desk and camera around a little bit. I actually swapped positions with the light and the camera. The light was there, the camera was there, and now I've swapped. Because I just didn't like the giant window that's right here. You can't see anymore. Just being half the screen. So it was annoying me. Back to this, but with the light now, why not? Isn't that like a requirement? Every YouTuber has to have some sort of lighting in the background. I've had this Falcon Eyes like F7 mini light just lying around for like the past couple of years. And it's been sitting on the shelf on that bookcase this whole time. So I figured, why not charge it and just turn it on and see if I can use it? So I threw it up there. So I'll see whether I'm going to continue to have that silly light there or not. I don't know. If I do, okay. What color it'll be, no idea. It was a hassle to try to figure out what color I wanted, so I just left it at that, honestly. These are the things, if you have a YouTube channel, you discover you spend a lot more time doing than you really ever thought about or expected. But anyway, back to reading this weekend. Definitely back to reading. Andre Norton it is, to get me out of my current reading slump that I put myself in because I rewoke my database brain. Time to put that back to rest for a little while, now that my database is built, my workflow is built. Dive back into one of my all-time favorite authors to get the story brain going again. So I can get back to making videos here.